Trump declared a ceasefire without Israel being a part of it. So a lot of people in India look back and said, okay, he did the same thing to Israel as he tried to do to us. And that acceptance of the reality of the games, a lot of people said, so the Americans are that harsh that they won't spare one of their best allies they won't wait for it to embarrass it. And those statements, oh, Israel will stop bombing right now. Israel will stop bombing right now. You don't do that to an ally. You talk to them separately. You don't put it out in the public. And then you kind of realize that the Americans have become too transactional, right?
Today, I'm excited to welcome back Aadi Achint for his third appearance on the channel. Aadi is the host of Dev Talks by Aadi. He's a defense and geopolitical enthusiast. Since our last conversation, the Middle East has changed dramatically. Iran has been weakened but remains dangerous. Hezbollah has suffered major setbacks. Syria is entering a new chapter. Questions are being asked about America's long-term role in the region, and Israel is thinking about its future in ways it never has before. Aadi, welcome.
Thank you so much. Namaskar and welcome. Thank you.
Most people think that this war is almost over. Do you think it's actually entering into a more dangerous phase? What is your current analysis of what's going on with this war?
It's not over. It's not meant to be over. And I think last time when we spoke, I had mentioned that the Americans have no intention for it to be over. It's going to be kept like this because at the end of it, if Iran is brought into the correct side, the Americans don't have anything to kind of justify their presence in this area. So it's not going to be over. It's going to continue like this. It's going to be, a sustained sort of a pressure campaign on Iran. Currently, it'll take a back seat because there's that funeral of the, supreme leader and all that stuff is there. So it will take a backstage, but it will, erupt in small circumstances due to various different reasons. I mean, it'll probably be the Straits of Hormuz, or it'll be some terrorist activity somewhere or the other, something of that sort. It'll keep on bringing up. So this is a pressure campaign which is basically begun. But the Americans need some time to wind back and kind of hit their midterms, and the oil prices need to be low. So that's what is happening right now. To me, this is something that is going to linger on for a while. It's not going to just die out. It will linger on to a point where some sort of a regional structure emerges, which can actually put a certain cost on Iran. And I think Israel will be quite as well in front. The Iranian position, if we look at it, is not as what is being advertised in the New York Times and the Washington Post. Everybody's giving it too much credit and credential for its presence and its alleged victory, if I may. It's a little beyond comprehension because this is again a media campaign which is being done, which is anti-Trump more than anything else. A lot of the world has gotten the entire geopolitical scenario wrong because of the Trump hatred, and that's something which is there in India as well. If you ask me as well, yeah, I don't like him, but when one is analyzing a situation, you can't get these personal inhibitions about a particular leader coming in the way of your overall analysis to figure out what's actually taking place in that region or in that domain. Let's look at it objectively. The Straits of Hormuz is the question, right? And the Iranians are warning that if you cross the Straits of Hormuz without their permission, they will fire and they will do all sorts of things. I kind of see that a little differently because ships are moving from the Omani route, right? That is happening. They did attack a Singaporean ship. I think it was MS Golden Lovely or something like that. That was the name. But beyond that, ships are still moving and they've not been able to do much about it. So there is defiance from both the Iranians and, of course, the Americans. This is basically building up to be a new normal in this area where the Middle East is going to change the way it looks at things. You can see that already. You can see the Middle Eastern countries now talking about alternative routes rather than depending yourself on the Straits of Hormuz. UAE is already broken away from the OPEC. Iraq is threatening to do the same thing. The Saudis are looking at a different pipeline going across into the Yanbu port, which is in the Red Sea. The Iraqis want to build up a pipeline, which is, of course, a lot of it is under work right now. Iraq through Kuwait right into Saudi Arabia and hitting the port of forget the port on the Red Sea, the Jordanian port. So there is that movement of creating an alternative to the Straits of Hormuz, which is basically going to be a point of contact or point of dispute in this particular region. So that changes the oil game, right? And if you look at the Middle Eastern dominance on the oil, it has completely changed. It's no more the oil center of the world. The oil center of the world is shifted from the Middle East to multiple polarity sort of a structure where you have Russia, you have the Middle East, you have Africa, countries like Nigeria, Mozambique, Kenya, all these guys are coming out. Ethiopia is supposed to be bringing out a pipeline into the new state of Somaliland, if I may, and bringing it out into the port of Berbera. Then you have the South American nations where India plays a huge role. Brazil, Venezuela, Argentina for gas. You've got you know, I think Suriname today morning, not South American, but Suriname brought about a billion barrels of oil. Somebody confirmed it this morning. In back to South America, you've got Guyana, which has huge oil fields. You've got Trinidad and Tobago in the CARICOM region. So there's a shift of the oil game, and of course the continental America and the United States of America and Canada, which are coming out to be the big players. And of course, if you go up into Europe, Norway, Denmark, these countries are coming up as suppliers of some amount of gas and oil. And so there's a shift. There's a shift in the oil market, which was basically Middle Eastern oriented. When you spoke about oil and gas, everybody looked at the Middle East and said, "Oh, it's here." That's not the game today. It's completely changed. Countries are looking at their own alternatives. Countries are looking at India is doing massive oil exploration right now. We found some oil, which is not obviously enough for us, but there is exploration happening in our island territories in the basins that we presume there is oil. So countries are looking at different angles, different structures, different games as far as energy is concerned. So this war has brought about a certain amount of change, and that will impact the entire Middle Eastern geopolitic, and their behavior towards the world. So it won't have that much money to spend on radical Islam, you know, because previously money used to just flow in, and they had the power to kind of cut off countries. They had the power to kind of pressure countries, which is not going to happen today. It's changed. It's changing as we speak. So okay, you can say certain American announcements in the beginning of the war of regime change and this and that, they have not been met. I never stood for the regime change game. I never thought it would happen. Personally, I thought taking out Khomeini on the first day of the battle was a bit of a mistake. It kind of solidified the Islamic world with Iran, which normally should not happen. Although there's no way to prove it, but I personally feel if Khomeini was kept alive, the situation in Iran would have been blamed on Khomeini, and which would have made it a little more difficult for these guys to keep in power. The removal of Khomeini basically enabled the IRGC to take charge of the country and remove anybody who was a distractor. We've seen public rebuttals of the foreign minister, the president from the IRGC handles. So that tells you that there is a different structure which is building up within Iran, which is not part of the traditional power structure in Iran. The last Israeli attack on Iran probably helped a little bit in terms of bringing this down by the alleged, and I don't have any confirmation, removal of Ahmed Wahidi, allegedly. So if that has happened, then the IRGC kind of seems a little off. And that's where it kind of helps you understand that there was a sort of a peace deal signed here where there was a lot of resistance from the IRGC. So, the situation is very volatile at the moment. For anybody to say Iran is one or USA is one or anything of that sort, I don't think so. When you look at Israel itself is preparing for the round two in Lebanon, people don't understand what the Lebanese operations is all about. The Hezbollah has maximum amount of his rockets are about 30, 50 kilometers range. And if you see the Israeli incursion is about 50, 60 kilometers. So you know what they're trying to do. They're trying to protect their mainland by creating a buffer in the north and guard themselves against the Hezbollah rockets, which was coordinating with the Iranian attack. So what would happen would be that the Iranians would fire from here and the Hezbollah would fire from here. And the Israeli air defense would have a bit of a challenge because it would get overwhelmed with about 200, 300, 400 rockets. How much can you fire? How much can you do? How much can you take out with your laser systems and whatever? Israel has good systems, but everything has a limit. So I guess there was a realization that, we need to push these guys back so that they can't overwhelm us and they can't really, coordinate with Iran and fight at us in the round two so that Israel has a little more maneuver room as far as targeting Iran. And this was probably tested during the last spat that took place between Israel and Iran, where I think the Israelis got a certain amount of confidence. All right, we know now what can come, how it can come, and we can deal with it. So they will be straightening up operations, which will happen in the north of northern Lebanon region, where they will reduce the Hezbollah's capability to a certain extent, where they can't threaten the Israelis like they did during the war, and preparation for the round two, which will take the Americans through the midterms, Israelis through this thing. Everybody thinks Israel and America are fighting to an extent. Yes, tactically probably yes, strategically probably no. So there's that whole rejig of the entire battle space which is taking place, which people fail to understand at the moment, and everybody's kind of jumping for joy that this is over. But I'm a bit skeptical. I don't think so.
Now, what worries you more, a stronger Iran or a weaker, more chaotic Iran? Because the last time I think we spoke, you warned that a collapsed Iran could create even a bigger regional disaster. Do you still believe that today?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. See, as far as the strength of Iran is concerned, it's going to take years for it to build up. It's not something which is overnight possible, that they can build up their missiles, they can build up their drones, they can build up that. China will help them a bit, Russia will help them a bit. That's part of the game. But it doesn't have that capability. They were almost flowing oil into the water, right? Their oil capacity was full up. Another 15, 20 days or 30 days of this blockade, it would have created issues within the oil productivity of Iran. During the peak of the war, Iranians were exporting somewhere around 2 million barrels of oil in spite of the war. But at the peak of the blockade, they were exporting just about 200,000 barrels. And that also, a lot of it was getting smuggled into Pakistan and, probably Afghanistan and Iraq and here and there and stuff, and getting smuggled out by whatever means. So they have been under a lot of pressure. There's no question about it. But one thing one must understand, the new structure in Iran, which is the IRGC, is not looking at the economy like the previous administration or the previous dispensation was. They don't want to grow as a normal country and build up their economy and have good lives, have good standard of living, and like what any other country wants for its citizens. I don't think that would be the first priority in Iran, and that to me is again dangerous. So half crippled Iran is dangerous at best, but its capacity to create chaos for a little bit has been reduced. There's no question about it. So it all depends as to what happens post the midterms in America, and how does Israel actually perceive the threat of Iran. If Israel does perceive a certain ready and willing threat, then I think Israel will take action unilaterally, because Iran is in that position today where it can't really, kind of do the kind of damage what Israelis would be worried about. They've reduced that capacity to a large extent. There are localized battles which are taking place in northern Kurdistan, where the Kurds are fighting Iran. There are localized battles taking place in Balochistan, which is the Iranian Sistan Balochistan. There are issues within the structure of the government itself. So, that whole strength, projected reality, a different discussion altogether, is not there at the moment. So they are going to take some time. They would want better relations with the region to kind of balance out. So you'll find them talking to the Saudis, you'll find them talking to the Omanis to figure out something for the Straits of Hormuz. They'll present a much more softer picture, which is what they're trying to do with this whole Khomeini's funeral. They've invited everybody. Their representatives from India is also going. So they will try and project normalcy, but the reality, of course, is far from that. What we also see is capital controls, which are going to be placed on Iran, where the US will try and control as much as for example, there's about $1 billion or $2 that $2 billion that needs to be released. It'll probably not be released in cash. It'll be released in food. It'll be released in medicines. It'll be released in humanitarian aid and stuff like that. So, on paper that they're getting their money back, but it's for a different purpose altogether. So that whole thing will happen. And you will find that there will be differences. There will be that argument which will take place as far as the behavior of Iran, if I may. So this is a region that is going to change. It's going to change quite a bit. What we saw probably a month ago when the negotiations were taking place, who all were active, are not active anymore. And what we will see in probably the next month, the changed position of each one of these nations will be very visible, because you can only, put a lipstick on a pig for a certain amount of time. It can, it's like dressing up a old horse or putting a lipstick on a pig. It's not going to work, So Israelis also need to take some time. This is my analysis. And that's where you see that the kind of statements that are coming out of Israel with regards to its partnership with America are pretty serious. They're looking at a very differential structure in the future. They're looking at being much more closely aligned with India as far as military is concerned. They're looking at much more closely aligned with the UAE and, in that region as far as that is concerned, because again, UAE, Israel have mixed interests in the Red Sea with, with Ethiopia, Eritrea, Sudan, and all these countries here. So there are differential interests. So Israel will rejig itself a little bit. India will become much more important to Israel than what was before because of the manufacturing capacity that India has. So there will be some amount of tech transfers which will take place, some amount of tech development that will happen in terms of the military avenue between India and Israel. Joint production will happen. For example, there are multiple examples, Barak 8 and the NG, the Negev machine gun, and multiple other things which are currently in the game will expand, and you'll find this not happening through major visits and this thing. It'll be just quietly done. That's one of the reasons why I see Israelis actually making those kind of statements about America, that we've been asking for this, you're not giving it to us. We've been asking for this, you're not giving it to us. So, we need to look away. So this is where that whole structure will change and the Middle Eastern security framework will change. You have challenges. So you have the Pakistan, Saudi, Qatar, Turkey, that sort of a link, which was termed as the Islamic NATO in some time, which fizzled out. Turkey has its own challenges close by. It's a little upset with India right now because of us positioning our missiles there in its neighborhood. So this whole game will change here. So there will be newer players that will come up. Americans will be there, of course, in an overarching way, but the localized strategic game will change to a large extent. So Iran, I mean, see, India is now thinking of exporting Abrahamos, which is supersonic cruise missile. It's battle proven. It's can't be shot down, to the UAE. They're asking for an advanced air defense systems that we have to be installed there and kind of set up there. So the security framework will change in this place, and you will find India, UAE, Israel. If Saudi gets its act right, it'll probably want to join this particular game, which will happen, by the way. Saudis will switch because currently Saudis have this, they can't stand with Israel. They can't do it legally. So they have to kind of bank the other side. But the other side is, empty. You have Pakistan, which is a dead beat. You've got Turkey, which has its own issues around this neighborhood, and of course the potential battle with Israel going in the future. So there is that, security angle shift which will happen. So let's see. It's a tough call at the moment, but Iran will find itself not as popular within the Russia-China circle as what it was before. The Chinese are very threat averse. They don't like to be inside threat. They don't like to be inside an environment where their interests kind of get hit. So they normally withdraw out of it. So you'll find that, yeah, Chinese will do business. There'll be a lot of statements and stuff like that, but nothing will move on the ground. There was a $400 billion deal that was done between China and Iran. About $25 billion has been spent till now, which is peanuts. So in about 3 years. So, I don't see that escalated threat matrix that everybody puts across. Oh, China will come now, China will fight, and probably Russia will give a couple of Sukhois, probably 10, 20, 30 Sukhois to Iran. China will give some missiles to Iran. That all will take place. That all today is not really, it's not really very important today. And you look at it from worldwide angles. Somebody supplying weapons to the other person it's taken as business, and it's not taken as a very big sort of a threat perception or anything like that. It's taken as business, it's taken as reality. So that all will be there, but I don't see that structure building up, as a lot of people used to say that there's an axis of evil, Russia, China, Iran, North Korea sort of a thing building up. I don't see that happening. There will be a lot of articles written about it. There'll be a lot of media articles. You'll find New York Times, Washington Post, Guardian, BBC writing all about it, up and down. There's been meetings, there's been secrets and this and that. But on the ground, if there was something like that, it should have displayed itself during this war, which didn't. All of these guys just said, we're not a part of it. So that realization will come to Iran as well. that, I got beat up, but nobody came to help me. How do they shift in their policy is something which we have to see. But I don't see a massive shift in the Iranian perspective because of, again, the mindset, the jihadist perspective that they've got. They will probably ease up within their people. So you'll find more women roaming around without their hair wheels and stuff, but things are going to remain the
Now, India, as you said, has maintained a relationship with both Israel and Iran for decades. Has this war made that balancing act a little bit harder for India? Has India's strategic view of Iran changed over the past 6 months or so?
Yes, to a large extent, yes, but the dealing will still be there. It's a neighbor, and Iran is just not about Iran for us. Iran is about Central Asia. Iran is about Afghanistan. Iran is about Russia, and getting a lot of materials from there for us. For example, coking coal, which is important for our steel industry, comes through Mongolia into Russia, comes across this way and comes down into crosses the Caspian into Iran and comes down into India. So those dealings will continue. There will be that particular business which will take place. Having said that, let me just put something across. The anti-Trumpism in India has taken a huge shift in terms of perspective. It was basically a lot of us in India were cheering for Iran because they were beating the shit out of the Americans. It's not anti-Israel as per se, but it's anti-USA. So it's a little different sort of a perspective that one needs to understand. So a lot of people were cheering the Iranians beating the American bases there and stuff. So that was there because that's because of the way that the Americans have behaved with us. The Trumpian egoism at display in terms of, oh, I stopped the war between India and Pakistan, and there was a very clear example of it where Trump declared a ceasefire without Israel being a part of it. So a lot of people in India look back and said, okay, he did the same thing to Israel as he tried to do to us. And that acceptance of the reality of the games, a lot of people said, oh, okay, this is, so the Americans are that harsh that they won't spare one of their best allies they won't wait for it to embarrass it. And those statements, oh, Israel will stop bombing right now. Israel will stop bombing right now. I mean, you don't do that to an ally. You talk to them separately. You don't put it out in the public. And then you kind of realize that the Americans have become too transactional, right? So look at it. I mean, they threatened us with everything possible, from sanctions to this to that. India never budged. It was always there. So the perception in India today is hardened towards its own policy rather than talking to anybody and saying, "Oh, this is my great friend," and this not going to happen. It's changed quite a bit. How do we look at Iran? Well, we look at Iran as a troublemaker. There's no question about it. Everybody understands that. People who know the reality are talking about the fact that Iran is sending Hamas into Pakistan, Hamas into Bangladesh. There are anti-India elements. Recently, they burnt the flag of India, Israel, and USA. So a lot of people in India asked, "What the frack? Why? What did we do to you? We've not attacked you. We've not done anything." Then the whole incident with the ships that happened here with Iris Dana and all that, where we gave it refuge, it didn't want to, and then got shot out of the waters. And initially, the Iranians kind of tried to blame us for it, but then sense prevailed, and they also realized it's not going to work. There will be dealings with Iran. There will be some oil dealings and this and that, but it's going to be transactional. It's going to be, okay, you're there in BRICS. Welcome, welcome. Great, great. Good, good, good. Come, come, come. You need some medicines. Yeah, we'll send it to you. You need this. We'll send it to you. Okay, by the way, we need to get our, port back in Chabahar so that we can do our game there. So it's going to be that, and it's because for India is also going to be a little difficult game because the relationship with UAE as it's building up and is becoming a very deep strategic partner of India as far as defense, trade, oil. UAE pretty much left the OPEC because India got ready to buy all of the extra oil. So it's not that simple at the moment. But the transactionalism and the relationship will be kept alive. It won't be like India's basically cut off Iran from certain things that, oh, we're not going to talk to you anymore and this and that. That India doesn't do with countries except for Pakistan, of course. But the realism in India is today now saying that we need to take whatever we get from wherever we get. It's if the world order is indeed breaking down, then we create the Indian order and work with that rather than keep bothering around with what's happening. Oh, is Israel going to get upset if I deal with Iran? Is America going to get upset? That's not going to be the thought process in India anymore. There was that inhibition before, but I don't see that happening in the future. I don't, because every country meets his own interests. Every country deals with his own interests. Now, we've never told Israel don't have good relations with China because they're standing on our borders. Why did Israel give one Kafir aircraft to China, which is now the J-10C that the Chinese, copy pasted and made? That's not going to happen. It's going to be a more of an understanding world order. And India kind of understands that. And India believes, okay, fine, fair enough. If there's a certain amount of transactionalism, then that's how it is. So let it be, and let individual relationships be at par, or be at at the strength of the individual relationship, rather than 2 + 2 4 and 3 + 2 8, or whatever you want to talk about. So it's not going to be in that aspect of it. It's going to be more of a much more transactional relationship going forward. Having said that, the larger perspective of BRICS will seem like a threat to the West, and that's something that is going to happen, right? So the larger perspective of that is going to take place, where BRICS will form a differential world order, right? So they will be that. How does it manifest is supposed to be seen by this time, this the upcoming BRICS meeting. But I don't see anything dramatic happening right now, because the world is shaken up because of the oil shock. And it's going to take at least a year or two before it actually comes out of that oil shock. A lot of people run back to the dollar when there's a shock in the world. So let's see. It's not going to be that easy, but there'll be a lot of positioning and chest beating and all that stuff will take place, which is cool, which is part of the game, and it's all market manipulation at the end of it. So yeah, India will deal with Iran. India will deal you know with whatever we need to do in that particular region, so that our interests are kept up.
Do you think that Israel has reached a point where it needs to become less dependent on the U.S. military aid? Not because America is an unreliable ally, but because being dependent on America has become a strategic risk. As you mentioned, Trump told Israel, to stop bombing Hezbollah, for example. Do you think it's come to a point where Israel should go on its own?
Now, the Israeli military is an extension of the American military. There's no question about it as far as the equipment is concerned. The tactics and the systems and all that is obviously different. But a lot of, for example, the most important part of the Israeli military currently, which is being used in this war, is the air power. And air power is deeply integrated with the Americans. So you can say that, okay, we'll go with our own drones and stuff, but the fighter platforms still remain. And this is one weakness I think India also has and Israel also has as far as jet engine technology and aviation. We have good drones flying around both the countries, but we don't have that jet engine coming across. In my opinion, I think India and Israel should work together, get going a jet engine program. India has been trying to do that for a while now. There has been some successes. There's been a lot of delays. It's not an easy technology to get. A lot of countries have. I mean, even China, the WS-10, 11, their lifespan is very, very little. They don't advertise it, but the countries that are using Chinese jet engines are, pretty open in what they're saying. So their aviation technology is not that matured as they push it across. See, Israel's dependency creates a vulnerability, right? And that vulnerability is American supply chains. America is just not producing the amount of weapons it needs. It's just not doing it. It doesn't have the capacity to do that, and it doesn't even have the will, or it's not even showcased the will to do it. If you look at the American productivity of, for example, 155 artillery shells, I mean, India produces more shells than America and Europe put together. The NATO buys these shells from us. So, and the Russians know about it, by the way. They know this is happening. There is just the longevity and the surge capacity that the Russians have shown in the war in Ukraine. It's just not there. It's just not there. You look at the way that I mean, the Israelis should have had Patriot batteries all over the place. There was no need or no way that Patriots were shot, and that's pretty well known. Taiwan is not getting its Patriots. Ukraine is not getting its Patriots. UAE is not getting its Patriots. Saudi Arabia is not getting its Patriots. Saudi Arabia had to call up Ukraine and say, please put some anti-drone systems here. We're getting hammered by these bloody Shahid drones. So the America has not shown that willingness to start producing. the willingness to start their industry back again, the constant delays. And you look at, I'll give you an example of the G404 engine. It's a jet engine that India's fighters is based upon. In 2 years, they've been able to supply us 6 engines, 1.5 years, six. That's it. Out of which one has been faulty, by the way. It's frustrating at best. And today, India is in a place where the French Safran is saying, take it from us. The Rolls Royce is saying, take it from us. The Russians are saying, take it from us. We've got our own jet engine program, which might get, when I'm using the word might, get matured in the next 1 or 2 years. So there's that everybody's saying, yeah, great technology, yeah, fantastic. You guys are great, but you can't build. You're not able to make it. It took us 24 months to get 6 Apache helicopters from the Americans. And that to a call from Prime Minister Modi to Trump and said, what are you guys doing? And that's something that Trump mentioned in the public after that. There is just no capacity to manufacture. And that is the place where Israel is now saying, yeah, we can't depend on this nonsense. One is the political gag, which keeps happening in a year, which nobody wants to hear in the middle of a war. And the second is the fact when we call up and say we need this, the America, oh yeah, it'll take us 8 months. 8 months? I need it tomorrow. Their war wastage reserves are not there. They've wasted their war wastage reserves in Ukraine. They've just wasted it. Now they don't have that capacity. Now they're saying, oh, we will build and this and that. But these high-end missiles like the Patriot, which is a million, I don't know, $500,000 of $1 million a pop. When you look at it, their ground capabilities have been absolutely pathetic. With the way it has been advertised to what the reality was, we've seen 6, 8 Patriots going across and missing out basic ballistic missiles from Iran, which is in the Al Udeid base and a couple of other places. So the questions are being asked, and people are saying, you know what, my own systems work much better than this. The Israeli systems work much better than this. The Indian systems are working much better than this. The Pakistanis fired ballistic missiles at us, we shot them all down. They fired some 15, 20 of these supersonic cruise missiles. We shot them all down. Not one came close to the target. We didn't have a single drone hitting anything. That's the Israeli capability as well. There are similarities between the systems there. So there is that question that, yeah, if we can do this on our own, why don't we find a partner that is using the same systems, is ready to work with us to develop those systems, and has the manufacturing capacity to give it to us. So today, the medium endurance high altitude, the male drones which are flying around in Israel are all made in India. So that realization is there. Yeah, we give these orders, they bloody within one year they're tucked. The drones are there. Here, take use. So they know 29% of Israeli equipment which was being used in this war came from India. So that understanding is there. If 1/3 these guys can do, why don't we actually take this forward? They need something from us. We need something from them. Let's meet halfway and say, listen, dude, let's do this. Let's make this. Let's make this. Let's make this. So that differentiation of the thought process is coming across. And that's where questions are being raised in Israel. What are we doing? Why are we so dependent on this one country where whenever we call, we get political jargon and, a back end switch that can switch off our systems? Why should we do this? Let's go to a country who doesn't care. There's no political this thing. It's pure business. Israel doesn't care where I use my weapons. I don't care where you use your weapons. So let's have a relationship of that particular sort to see if we can figure this out. So once that relationship is getting set up, is when the pushback is actually coming across. It's not because there is just, oh, we are just talking about it, let me push back America without having anything in hand. Because there's something coming in hand, things are moving at a certain pace. Is Israel coming out and saying, listen, at last, I need to move away from you. I need to not have that dependency that I've had on you. So you will find that change which is taking place. You will find Israel, UAE, and India working together in a lot of these aspects. And that's where the new regional framework and the security framework will emerge. So it's not going to be anti-Iran as per se. It's not that if Israel is fighting Iran, India is also supposed to fight Iran. No. Or India is fighting Pakistan, Israel is supposed to fight. No, that's not going to be. It's not an alliance. It's a partnership. And there's a huge difference, which is where the world order is changing. It's not going to be, oh, you're my ally, so you need to do what I'm doing. No, you're my partner. Support me where you can. Where you can't, talk to me, tell me, make me understand. Fair enough. That's the change in the thought process in the world, which is actually being seen today. The Iranians thought, let me say this, a lot of their media shills, that one professor or whatever. He, in the beginning of the war, he was saying, "Oh, the Chinese will come and fight for us." I used to laugh. I'm like, Chinese are not coming anywhere. They don't want to go 150 kilometers beyond their coast. What are you talking about coming 3,000 kilometers and fight? They're not going to do that. There is no chance they're going to do that. They don't have the capacity. The Chinese have one war to fight. It's with India, fair enough. It's with US, fair enough. It's with Taiwan, fair enough. One war. They can't fight beyond that. They're not going to be able. Their equipment is just not there yet. Yes, they've got great rocket systems. Fantastic. But the corruption levels within China and the problems that they have right now, which is not going to let them fight this war. So any perception that everybody had that, oh, Russia is going to jump in, no, they're not. They're not. China is going to jump in. No, they're not. Nobody's going to come to anybody's aid. Back end support, partnerships, fair enough. So that's where the world is going to go to. So Israel is probably realizing that this fair enough, we'll keep the alliance alive, but I need to diversify. This is not going to work for me. And that's one of the reasons why India never signed an alliance with anybody. India is very close to Russia, but we're not signing an alliance with them. India is was pretty friendly right now, a bit of tensions with America. We don't want to sign any alliance there as well. They've been trying to militarize the Quad. We said, no ways. Let's keep a military segment of the Quad. But if you think that the Quad is just the military, no, it's not. We don't accept it. Because look how they behaved when we had a battle with Pakistan, we had a battle with China. We had a 4-year-long standoff with China. Nobody came to us. We never expected it as well. Nobody came for our rescue. That's how it is. If nobody's going to come to us, we're not going to go to anybody else. And that's an understanding that India's always had. We fight alone. So I'm not fighting your battle. Can the Americans come to 16,000 feet in my Himalayas where, people can't breathe, walk, do anything and fight? It'll take them 40 days to get acclimatized. Forget coming there and fighting. It's not possible. Americans didn't come to Israel's aid at all. They didn't send a fighter aircraft on the ground with Israel. And no, they fought their own war. Israel fought his own war. I think that's the realization where Israel is also saying, listen, if that is the case, I need to figure out something else. So that's where you see these thought processes changing. And that's the new world order at the end of it. And I'm glad that countries are realizing it.
Yeah. Now, we're seeing two different voices emerge inside the Trump administration. You have Vice President J.D. Vance, who emphasized, avoiding endless Middle East wars. Let's get out of it. While Marco Rubio has taken a harder line against Iran and strongly, backed Israel, gave Israel more leeway to do what they want to do. From India's perspective, which approach do you think works better for Israel's long-term security?
This is their internal politics playing out. It's the Republicans versus the Republicans. Who's going to be the nominee for the 2028 election? Honestly, till now, they made a fool out of JD Vance. They made a fool out of him. If you compare it, Marco Rubio was handling Venezuela. Venezuela is successful. JD Vance handled Iran. Look what he did. So that narrative is there. People are talking about that. So it's a little, it's a little. I'd say it's internal politics more than anything else. Because the American policy today is always been what it is. So there's no change in that. They've always remained aloof. They don't want to involve themselves. They don't want to do all this stuff. But they have to, because to extend their own kind of dollar dominance and stuff. This war was not about Iran at all. They don't care. They love antagonistic Iran because it justifies their position there. They can tell the Saudis, she's going to attack you. Okay, so I'll protect you. And look what they've done. It was previously oil for protection, right? Today is now Trump is saying, pause to the oil. We got enough. Give me money, boss. Open your sovereign funds. Start ordering weapons, and I protect you. Otherwise, I move back. See, it hurts, right? Let me assure you, a lot of the damage done on the ground to the Gulf nations has been quite intentional. Americans didn't want to fight in their full capacity. Teach them a lesson. You guys think that you can play around and show me eyes with OPEC and all that stuff? Well, okay. I'll show you who I am. And they've done that pretty successfully if you look at it. All these countries are running back to the Americans and saying, hey, I need weapons, I need this, I need that. Except for the Saudis, which are a little stern right now, but you'll see something happening in Saudi Arabia in the next some time. I won't be surprised if there is a popular protest, backed by the Americans in some way. You know how the Americans work in this particular aspect. They'll create this chaos. The Pakistanis, for that matter, look at it. I mean, they think they've just arrived, right? I won't be surprised if Pakistan goes back into the FATF grey list and they're going to be looking around and say, we did so much and got what? That's the main thing. You trusted a country which is transactional, and when it doesn't work, they're going to dump you like toilet paper. That's not my words. That's the defense minister of Pakistan's words, by the way. So JD Vance versus Rubio is something which is a political battle where, and Trump likes it. You know, Trump likes this battle between people where he's the overarching referee between both of them. And, oh, calm down, calm down. I'll decide what needs to be. Though he comes looking like a king and stuff, he likes that. So he's probably inducing these battles. He's inducing these leaks and JD Vance is not ready for for higher negotiations with countries. He gets played around by Pakistan. He sent JD Vance into Pakistan, which was embarrassing at best, I think. Look what happened in Switzerland as well. He embarrassed JD Vance. JD did not know what to do, where to look. It was very ill planned. If I was JD Vance, I would have never agreed for the Iranian delegation to come inside where I was standing and say I'm not going to meet him. I would have ripped the head of the person who even planned that. My delegation would have been all across the other side of the game, and Pakistani standing in the middle with a flag somewhere. I wouldn't have done that because it's in diplomacy you plan for all these things, and diplomacy is all about how you look. What is the perception that is formed? What you do about that perception? He lost the game right there. And then after that, his body language coming across to the Pakistani president and prime minister and army chief. What happened? Oh, he's not wanting to meet. It was like the Americans were getting surprised. And I've never seen the Americans in that particular aspect, in that particular light. So this is basically these two guys fighting. So JD will be a little more vocal against Israel because the boys that are backing him probably don't like Israel, which are the tech boys. You've got Palantir and all these guys who are there behind him. Elon Musk, Palantir, and all these chaps who are JD Vance favorites. Whereas other guy, Marco, is a more of a traditionalist, where the Israeli structure, the good old American structure, the old world is still behind him. So this is a battle between those two people, and this is the funny part of it: American politics playing out in the world in times where people are actually losing their lives. But that's the reality.
Now, seems that it's more and more likely that in the next administration, Israel has no choice but to look outside of America as a partner, for a partner. So, do you think that it would be a good prediction that eventually India will become Israel's most important strategic partner, not just economically, but militarily, technologically? I think it seems that they'll be forced to do so. What do you think?
Yes, there will be a force on both the sides. So I'm an Indian. I'm not going to say, oh yeah, Israel will be forced to work with India. I'd love to say that because then feel better. India needs something from Israel as well, right? It's a give and take, and that's why it's called a partnership, right? So I can have my ego and stiff up a little. You Israelis, you can't make anything. You come here, and that's not how it goes, right? It's a partnership. Partnership is fair enough. I'll go to the Israelis and say, listen, I need this. So Israel say, okay, can you give us this? Yeah, okay. That's how it'll go. Because see, the nature of warfare itself has changed, right? The nature of warfare has changed. The way war fighting is done has changed. Drones, missiles, rockets has changed the perception of war. Absolutely. There's a different way of protecting your country today than what it was probably about 5 years ago when the Iron Dome was established in Israel. Today there are issues within the Iron Dome, and that's going to happen as the other side progresses. The other side is not standing still. So if you've reached here, the other side will reach here. You got to keep going up so that the other side, keeps playing that catch-up game with you. A lot of people misinterpret that. Oh, wow, this is great. Nobody can beat me now. Yeah, okay. 2 years later, some guy is sitting on top. What do you do with that? And let me give you another example here to help you understand. In the 80s, 90s, Pakistanis had an integrated air defense system. It was made by the Americans and given it to them, right? So they had proper, they could fight the battle anywhere from anywhere. India didn't have that. India built something called its own AFNet, which is the Air Force network. The Indian Air Force went across the country, laid down cables, put on redundancies, satellites, the entire thing. And today we've got something called IACCS, which is the Integrated Air Command and Control System. They have remained where it is. Yeah, we went up here now, and that is climbing because now we are looking at ABMs, we are looking at all sorts of different systems to get in that. So we are looking at 5,000 kilometers range in terms of ballistic missile launch radars and all sorts of things that are getting integrated into this particular system. But this is self-built. So we upped the game. That's why we were able to dominate these guys. Previously, it was that, okay, we had an air defense sector here, we had an air defense sector here. If this guy had to transfer something here, I had to call up and say, listen, okay, check this vector, this guy is coming here, so they would transfer. And today is not that. I mean, I can sit in the Andaman and Nicobar Islands, which is somewhere there. fight a battle in Jammu and Kashmir, which is 4,000 kilometers away. There's no problem. They can actually do radio telecommunication from there. They can talk to the pilots. They can do everything. So the technology has changed. The war fighting has changed. The requirements have changed. Israelis recognize this with the way that the Iranians have assaulted Israel in terms of the drones and in terms of the missiles and stuff. There is a recognition that, okay, these swarms can be dangerous. It can. Not everything can be shot down with a missile. You need to have guns, right? So they came up with these CRAM systems where Israel has, I think, about 28 of these CRAM systems currently in operation, cost about $4 million. Now you look at India, what has India done? Taken a 1960s gun, put a freaking brain on it, and it's cheap as shit, and it can fire that much amount and take out the same drones. So there is a low cost system, there's a high cost system. How do we come in the middle? That's where this partnership will grow, because there are solutions which are different here. There are solutions which are different here. The needs are different here, needs are different here. So what needs are common, you will find these countries starting to work together and saying, listen, we need this. So Israel has a coastline, India has a coastline. We probably need a lot more long endurance drones which can actually monitor that coastline. We've got a coastline up to 7,000 kilometers, plus our island territories and stuff. Israel being a smaller country, but still has a large coastline, and the Mediterranean, which is a battle space, and the Red Sea in the south, which is another battle space. So you need these kind of drones, long endurance drones, to monitor what's happening in there. So you will find that partnership kind of building up in sectors, in segments. It's not going to be open-ended that the Israeli military and the Indian military have kind of linked together and exactly what the Americans and the Israelis did at one point of time. That's not going to happen. It's going to be sector-based, it's going to be requirement-based, but it's going to be a very deep partnership. Because see, the reality is that India has a certain shortage of technology because it was too lazy, right? We were too lazy till China woke us up some time ago. So we need that kind of technology which Israel has, and Israel needs productivity, which India has. India can produce en masse, which Israel can't. So the niche needs to be made into mass. How do you do that? You partner with someone who has that capacity to manufacture, who has that capacity to not just manufacture but withstand this cacophony of global pressure. Oh, your weapons are doing this and bull. So that very few countries have today. It's India, China, Russia, Americans. Yeah, okay, fine. In certain segments, not in everything. Aviation, yes, I'll give it to the Americans. They can. But now look at what's happening to the aviation industry in America as well. Their own F-35Bs are coming out without radars. Can you imagine a frontline fighter aircraft coming out without a radar fixed in it? Why? Because the damn thing was using Chinese alloys in terms of rare earths. Now, this is the stupidity of America, not anything else. So it's going to lose its clients because of this. And I said this about 6-8 months ago that Indian-Israeli defense partnership is going to build even further. You will find a lot of R&Ds happening together, which is being done separately in Israel, separately in India. A lot of places, they will just say, yeah, let's just sit together. It'll take us less time. You've done half the work. I've done half the work. Let's merge. Okay, we've come to 75% and we'll do the 25 together, out of which I need this part. So I'm going to take this. I need this part. I'm going to take this and let's build. That's where the relationship is going to come to. And it's already there in a lot of segments. People are realizing it now. Oh, this is happening. No, it's already happened. Drones, radars, air defense missiles, air defense systems is already very well linked up with each other. Similar systems are being used, similar radars are being used, similar missiles are being used, similar low-end systems are being used as far as directed energy weapons and this and that. There's a lot of interlinkages between the two countries. So you'll find this developing even further, but at a partnership level, not at an alliance. So we will never tell Israel, listen, China's attacking us, you come and fight for us. Or Israel will never call up India and say, listen, Iran is bombing me right now, come and help me. It's not going to happen. So that understanding and that clarity of mind and the clarity of thought process will be there. You will find that to be there. And that's where a mature relationship will actually happen. So a lot of people are now talking about it. Oh, this is India and Israel are going to be the future defense. Dude, they've been defense partners for the past 4 years. Actually, long time before that, but the deep integration has already started 4 years ago. So people are a bit surprised today. I, for one, have been saying this for a while. This will happen. This has to happen. The more the Americans make a fool out of themselves, a lot of countries are going to say, listen, I can't forget it. You give me what you can. That's going to happen. And look at the Philippines, look at the Vietnam, look at Indonesia buying Indian systems. UAE buying $4 billion worth of arms, which is now, as I mentioned about Turkey. Turkey's been surrounded by 3 sides by Indian defense systems. So you got the Armenians, which have a lot of Indian military. They've bought about, I think, about 30, $40 billion worth of it. A lot of Indian military hardware is there. They are now supplying to Cyprus and Greece. So the Turkish media is going bonkers right now. What have we done here? We need to get back to India and not do all this. So there's that. I'm sure you've seen the Turkish media talking about it quite a bit. What happened here? We missed a bus or something. So India is going to do its own stuff, work with other people as well. But India Israel is going to be pretty close. There's just no way out for it. The technology, see, the problem with the Americans is they think that if they share technology, the other guy is not going to kind of acknowledge it. The world has changed. And look at Israel and India. There's some technology going from India to Israel in certain things in defense. A lot of it is coming from Israel to India, and there's a lot of work which is happening together. You don't hear a peep out of it from Israel or India. There's no way. We gave you this. See, it's working well. It's nobody says that. But that's where the Americans come in, right? The Americans will come out and say, Israel is fighting with our F-35s. See, the best aircraft in the world. And Israelis are looking around and saying, you jackasses, you lost 42 aircraft. In your campaign, we didn't even lose a single one. What the fuck are you saying? So there's that when you're in war, you don't want a country to come around and say, they're fighting with our systems. What fighting with your systems? You had fratricide, man. I mean, 3 of your chaps got shot down by your own missiles. Did that happen to Israel? No, it didn't. Israel lost, I think, 3-5 drones. The American total loss is 42 aircraft, including F-35s and F-15s. And you don't know Israeli will like the Americans saying, oh, this is American system. That's why Israelis won. Yeah, well, you know what? That's not the reality. Israel won because of its own grit. And Israel is fighting because of its own people. The pilot inside that aircraft is still an Israeli. The ground controller inside an ops room deep under some freaking bunker somewhere is still an Israeli. The general who's planning the operation is still an Israeli, he's not an American. So that differences will start. You will find this, and this will. I've already seen articles about it in multiple Israeli newspapers where they are not very happy with the way that the American generals behave with Israel. It's like ordering Israel to do this, ordering Israel to do that, and that's exactly what Joe Biden did when it restricted a lot of the weaponry which was required for Gaza, and that's exactly what Trump is doing. So here is something again I've been saying for a while, that if people think that Republicans and Democrats are different, they're not. They're absolutely not. They are absolutely not. They work on something called the uniparty. That center line always drives their policy. Yes, 10% difference here, 10% difference here. Fair enough. Netanyahu would be the first person who would go and meet Donald Trump when Trump gets inaugurated. May not be the case with Joe Biden or any other Democratic president who takes charge the next term or the term after that. It may not be so. That's just the 10%. The basic policy still remains the same. And that's something I guess the Israelis are realizing to a large extent, which is good. I'm glad.
Yeah. Well, Adi, as always, I appreciate our conversation. I learn so much every single time, and I'm sure that our viewers will as well. Thank you, and hope to speak to you again soon. And very thankful for the India-Israel partnership. And as we mentioned, I hope that it grows and that we benefit from each other.
Yeah, it's a partnership, right? That's the whole thing. And see, that's the maturity that I spoke about, where the Americans will not accept a partnership. They want an alliance and a subservient sort of a relationship, where the world is now saying, enough, that's not going to happen. We're going to push back around it. We're not accepting that nonsense anymore. We will create our own structure. We will talk about it our own self, and we are strong enough of figuring out what we need to do in our own region. If we are not, we get beaten for it. You don't. Because you stand on the side as it is and wave a flag and say, see, we told you so. So if you're going to say, we told you so, I'd rather as well have you little away from me and I do what I want to after that. So that's exactly what India's policy has been. Strategic autonomy. Friends with everyone, partners with everyone, no codependencies, no interlinking, and no fighting someone else's ball. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.